Hello, everyone. I can see we've got people joining the meeting. Some people are still connecting to audio, so you might not be able to hear me. But first of all, big thanks to those who have joined. As is usual with these events, we like to give a few minutes just to allow as many people to join as possible because we've had a lot of interest in the sign-ups. So if you're happy just to sit tight and we'll wait a minute or two for more people to join. But can I just suggest in the meantime, in the chat box, if you could just share your name, your country and perhaps an organization that you represent, if that's the case, just so we can get a sense of who's in the room. And we'll start shortly. Thanks. Okay. I think hopefully we are now also live on our YouTube channel and our Twitter channel. So a big welcome and a big hello to anyone who is watching on those channels too. My big suggestion would be to really make sure that you're in the room and part of the conversation would be to follow the Zoom link in the video description so you can join us and interact with the panelists and share your thoughts and questions directly. Because it will be on YouTube and Twitter, this meeting is also means it will be recorded. So anyone who wasn't able to attend in person right now, hopefully will be able to use this as a helpful resource to learn from our youth leaders for nutrition. As we are sort of about 5 minutes in now, I think we probably ought to get started. First of all, I'll just quickly start by introducing myself. My name is Sean Coonahan. I'm the Advocacy and Youth Advisor in the Scaling Up Nutrition Civil Society Network Secretariat. So my role is to really manage the Youth Leaders for Nutrition programme, making sure that we are carrying out our youth engagement work in the right way, in the most meaningful way possible. And a big priority for me is making sure that we are directly engaging with the most marginalised and underrepresented children and youth people and young people. And we'll talk a bit more later on in the session about how we're doing that. But I've also had the privilege of working with the amazing Youth Leaders for Nutrition who were brought on before I joined. So really happy today to have Jane and Mike and Maxwell who are going to talk about the amazing work that they have been doing in their previous role as Youth Leaders for Nutrition. This is part of our kind of a wider effort to capture good practices across the SUN movement, across the civil society network, so that we can apply these learnings elsewhere to different contexts, different regions, and just take that work that we're doing to the next level. So in this case, with youth engagement. Without further ado, I think I'll move on now and just introduce our three wonderful panelists. First of all, we have Mike Nkumbo Kunga. He is a public health and nutrition specialist from Malawi, and Mike has led nutrition projects in his home country, engaging various stakeholders and advocating for improved access to nutrition for all. Mike holds two governance positions within the SUN movement and the civil society network on both the SUN movement XCOM and the CSN steering group. And he's currently studying for a master's in public health in Leeds. Has already gone on to do fantastic things, and we're all very excited about what he's going to do next. So thank you, Mike. And then next we have Jane, and Jane I think has been having a bit of connection issues, but hopefully we'll be able to turn her camera on now. Thank you, Jane. Jane is an experienced nutritionist from Kenya who's passionate about community engagement for improved nutrition. She currently works for Feed the Children in Kenya and has led the Feed Nutrition Advocacy Unit, which has really highlighted the link between nutrition nutrition for adolescent girls and the links between gender inequality and child marriage. In addition to all of this, Jane was actually recently recruited as one of our new national youth coordinators. So she's now taking the lead on that mission in Kenya, and she's going to tell us a bit more about what that entails. So thank you, Jane. Now, before I move on to introduce Max, I forgot to mention that this event is being interpreted in French, Spanish, and English. If you would like to follow along in your preferred language, my suggestion is if you're using a computer, and I think the same for a phone, at the bottom of the screen, you should see an interpretation button. It says interpretation, and then there's a kind of sketch of a globe. If you click that, you can choose your preferred language of English, French, and Spanish. So even right now, I'm speaking English, and you understand English. It's worth just selecting English, because later on we might be hearing from some French speakers or some Spanish speakers, and then you can hear that channel interpreted into English. So I'm just going to select the English channel now, and I hope everybody else has been able to do that. If you are having any problems accessing the interpretation, please just raise a concern on the chat, and we'll try and help you out with that. And then my last point on that, and this is mostly a reminder to myself, is that because this is being interpreted, we all need to be very mindful of the pace at which we're speaking. And I definitely speak far too fast for interpreters generally. So I'm going to really try and slow it down. And Jane and Mike and Maxwell, I kindly ask that you be mindful of that as well. And to the interpreters, if you're having any issues with the way we're speaking, please just let us know and we'll be mindful of that. So is Max still on the call? Max, I think he might have dropped off. If he's not on yet, I can still introduce him, and then
I'm here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Let me see if I can. Oh, yeah, I see. Let me just. There we go. Welcome back, Max. Brilliant. I was just doing quick introductions for all three of you. So last but not least, Max is a youth advocate from Zambia, who also works as a psychological counsellor for children living with HIV and AIDS and tuberculosis in his country. In his role as a youth leader for nutrition, Max has been a fearless champion and advocate for improved nutrition financing. He's engaged in some of the highest political fora and held decision makers to account on their responsibilities to uphold the right to adequate nutrition for children, young people, and adults alike. Max is particularly passionate about youth participation and inclusion in current food systems, and also making sure that they're included in the efforts to deliver climate justice. And we've seen that in some of these events and activities that he's participated in. I'm sure we'll hear a bit more about that later on. So that was a very quick introduction to our three fantastic panelists, our brilliant youth leaders for nutrition. But without further ado, I think we should move on now and start to hear about the individual projects that they've each delivered during their time as a youth leader for nutrition. And first up, we've got Mike. So I'm going to share my screen, if you give me 1 second. Okay. Right. Can you see my? Is my screen showing the right thing now? Mike, was that a nod?
No, I can't see it from my end. I don't know if others can see.
No, we can't see.
Right. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. It worked when we practiced. Now is it working or still not?
No.
No. Okay. Apologies. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Now is it working?
Yeah.
And is it
Perfect.
showing the full screen of your presentation? Yeah.
Yes, I think it's a full screen.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I'll hand over to you now, Mike. If you want me to change the slide, just let me know and I'll click through.
Okay.
Over to you.
Yeah, so thanks so much, Sean, and thanks so much to the organizers for this meeting. This is quite wonderful for us, the youth leaders, to kind of pass on the information to the entire SUN community, but particularly to the youth coordinators who are taking up our role in terms of youth engagement in the SUN movement. So I'm happy to share with you my presentation, which I think it has just gone off from screen, but I think I can carry on while Sean is working on it. So basically, I started my work in Malawi, where I basically come from. And my youth participation started in 2019 alongside other representatives here, Maxwell and Jane. So the campaign which I was leading in Malawi was to promote youth participation in nutrition platforms as a way of enhancing adolescent nutrition. So the basic for this campaign, particularly in terms of like the idea behind it, was I wanted to make sure that the young people in the communities, in the first place, they know about nutrition. In the second place, they know about nutrition committees, which are within their communities. And in the third place, they take part in these committees. Why was this important? It is because I realized that previously, all the projects in my country were not targeting young people. And at the same time, young people were not aware of nutrition. But when we look at in terms of the cases, in terms of teenage pregnancies, early marriages, these issues were high in my country. As such, it makes sense to engage young people while they are young, and while the information would make sense to them to promote nutrition within their households when later on they get settled down or when they are married, something like that. So I will take you through in terms of the steps which I took, and later on I'm going to discuss the achievements that I made through this campaign, and I'll also share with you the challenges. Next slide, Sean. So as I said, the concept was connecting the dots. Young people within the community should be able to understand the nutrition structures, and at the same time, they should participate in these nutrition structures. So at community level in my country, we have the Area Nutrition Coordinating Committee. So basically, these are small governance nutrition committees within the communities. And that would make sense previously for me to make sure that young people are part of these committees. So the hypothesis, or maybe the basic concept, was that once young people are involved within the nutrition committees, they will be able to learn new information about what the committee is doing. But at the same time, since young people have the energy, they have the voice, these committees will be enhanced, will be strengthened, and they'll be able to deliver on their role or on their task. Next slide. So I'm going to take you through the steps which I did to achieve my campaign. First of all, these structures or the committees or the platforms were already established and they never had young people in place. At the same time, these committees were governed by decision makers at district level and even at community level. So the first step for me was to, one, go through the these decision-making bodies. And at district level, we have the District Nutrition Coordinating Committee, while at national level, we have the Department of Nutrition, HIV and AIDS. So it is the one that governs all nutrition activities from the communities to the district and even at national level. So I had to go through these steps for me to start engaging my young people. But at the same time, I had to make sure that I also take the channel of youth networks in my country, because there were already youth clubs and youth networks. So I didn't want just to take young people just all over the place, but I should involve them through their youth networks and the youth clubs in a way that maybe if my project ends or expires, this initiative should continue. So as you can see from this first picture, this was the deputy, the Director of Planning and Development at one of the districts in the central part of my country. So he is the one who is the chair for the District Nutrition Coordinating Committee, a committee that looks in terms of nutrition at district level. So it was quite important for me to talk to him, to sell my idea, and to get a buy-in from him before I meet the young people and even before I move further. Next slide. The second picture, which you can see to my left, is now, I'm getting now into the ground. I moved from the high decision-making board at district level. Now I'm engaging one of the chair of the Nutrition Coordinating Committee, and he's the principal nutrition and HIV and officer. So this person to my left is the one that is responsible for nutrition activities at community level, and it also makes sense for me to sell my idea to him so that I learn in terms of how best we can engage young people within the nutrition committees. And is to my right, she is also the same person holding the same position, but in another district, because I did my campaign in 2 districts, one in the central part of my country and the other district in the southern part of my country. So I had to engage all of these stakeholders. Next slide. As I said, we do have youth within the youth networks and within the youth clubs, and my focus was to engage young people already within the youth clubs and the youth networks, to engage them within the nutrition committees or the nutrition structure that at community level. So maybe if I can just provide a very brief background. So we have like 2 separate networks. We have the youth networks on the other hand, and we have the nutrition kind of like network on the other hand. My focus was to make sure that the youth who are in the youth network, they're able to take part in the nutrition network in a way that they should be able to learn what is happening in the nutrition networks, but at the same time, they should be able to carry out the same information to the youth networks and the youth clubs so that they should champion nutrition in the community. So from the youth network aspect, the picture which you can see to my left is the district youth officer who is responsible for all youth activities at district level. And later on, I had now to move from high decision-making committees at the district level, now to hit the ground, now to really meet these community nutrition committees. So the picture which you can see to my right, this is one of the committees that I met in one of these districts. So to them, now it was a matter of telling them that I have engaged decision makers within your committees at highest level. They have accepted the idea of young people being part and parcel of your committees. So these meetings were kind of now trying to get the feedback from the committees in terms of how they're going to welcome young people in the committees. And I can tell you, these were quite very, very hot meetings, because in the first place, young people were never part of these committees, and it was not quite easy for them to accept young people to be part of the committees. So this was quite kind of like an intense discussion in my campaign. Next slide, Sean. And later on, it was now time to meet the youth themselves. And honestly, I was quite fascinated and amazed in terms of learning how young people were able to do different activities in their communities. So the picture which you can see in my left is one of the youth clubs in the central part of my country. So this was now a matter of telling them that I have made the committees in your community. I have made the decision makers, the stakeholders at district level. And the idea is I want you guys to be part of these committees so that you should be able to learn what the committees is doing, but at the same time, you should champion nutrition activities within your community. So this discussion was kind of welcome to them because at the first place, they told me that, we have been hearing about these committees, but we have never taken part in these committees. So they really welcomed my idea, and we had a lot of interaction, a lot of discussion to make sure that how best they can be involved in these committees. The picture which you can see to my right is the same thing. This is this youth club in the in the southern part of my country. And perhaps you cannot see properly, but there's a woman who's sitting on a chair. So she is a village headman within the community level, a highest making decision within the community. So I made sure that I also engage her within these meetings so that she should know what is happening within the community, but also should support my campaign. Next slide, Sean. Yeah, so I'm sorry to present only pictures because I thought this would make sense to you than slides, than words. So the pictures which you can see right now, these are nutritional trainings that I conducted in 2 districts. First of all, I had to make sure that before the youth join the committees, they should know about nutrition because the committees, they already know information about nutrition, but young people were quite new to this kind of information. So I had to make sure that I trained them just the basic concept of nutrition, how nutrition is promoted in the community, and how the nutrition coordinating committees work within the community so that when they join the committees, they should be able to know what to do. So these are the picture presentation of the trainings that I did in 2 districts. Next slide, Sean. Yeah, so these are now the outcomes, the positive feedback from the training and from all the interaction that I did at the community level. I'm telling you guys, I never gave any of these youth club any coin or any penny to do whatever they are doing, to do whatever you are seeing here. Initially, after I engaged them, after I challenged them to do nutrition activities within the community and how they can make positive change within their community, they started to make initiatives on themselves. These are some of the gardens which they did in the community, the vegetable gardens, and they were selling these vegetables to the community as a way of promoting nutrition. So these are some of the positive outcomes that were harvested from my initiative. Next slide. So from the garden, now we have to move to the table. So this is actually a picture presentation of one of the youth clubs doing cooking demonstrations and showcasing to the community that we know about nutrition and we can challenge you that we can be able to, cook different varieties of food, and this will be able to promote nutrition within the households and the like. Next slide, Sean. Yeah, that's just another picture presentation of a cooking demonstrations. This was quite an interactive event in the community because the young people were able to showcase what they can do in terms of food and in terms of how nutrition can be promoted. Next slide. So this is, of course, media attention, which I gained after I did my my youth engagement in the districts. And let me also tell you that this was quite like a new initiative in the whole country because for all of us, for over decades and over time, young people were taken as lessly involved in nutrition activities. And after I made some impact in terms of youth engagement within the nutrition committees and also youth champions at nutrition community level, these were kind of the media attention that I gained through the campaign. Next slide. So just to highlight what we achieved. So youth were able to be mainstreamed in nutritional committees. As I mentioned, the area nutrition coordinating committees, which really looks like in terms of governing nutritional activities at community level. So I made sure that young people are part and parcel of these committees. Secondly, what we achieved was there was a strengthened relationship between youth clubs and these committees. As I mentioned, we have a youth network, which is a kind of like a parastructure to a nutrition network. So after my initiative, there was kind of like a strengthened relationship between the two. And at the same time, the trained youth were able to practice whatever they were trained, whatever they learned. As you saw from the previous picture, they were able to do backyard gardenings as well as doing the cooking demonstrations just to showcase in the communities. Next slide. So what are the bonds which we swallowed? What were the challenges, contextual issues? So the first challenges was there was a huge resistance from the committees. As I said, these committees were already established in the first place, and they were not kind of willing to engage young people within the committees. So this was like a huge challenge which we had to, tackle it before the young people are able to be part of the committees. And at the same time, one thing that I realized was that there was poor capacity building of the nutrition committees. Initially, after they were established, there were no proper trainings and no capacity building in terms of resources and knowledge for them to work. So it would make sense that even though the young people are engaged within the committees, but continued training young people would be quite important so that they make impact within the committees. So these were the challenges that I faced, and the success are the ones that I've already highlighted. And I think, next slide. Do we have next slide, John? Oh, yeah. So that's the end of my presentation. I'm here. I look forward to a huge engagement from what I've presented. And yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Mike. Super fascinating, and I can see in the chat people have been very inspired, impressed, and I'm sure there's lots of questions for you as well. So thanks for sharing that. As I said before, we're going to hold off for the Q&A until we've heard from all three youth leaders. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to move swiftly on to hearing from Jane. So if you give me 1 second, I'm going to share my screen and bring up Jane's slide. Here we go. Okay, can everyone see the PowerPoint? And Jane, are you with us? Could you just come off mute and let me know?
Yes, I can hear you.
Brilliant. Okay, I'm gonna go in full screen and hand it over to Jane, who I think the campaign here was called With Adolescents for Adolescents, right? So over to you, Jane. Tell us more about it.
Thank you so much, Sean, and nice presentation, Mike. For me, I'm running a campaign scaling up adolescent nutrition, and I started it in 2019 when the Youth Leaders for Nutrition program started. And one of the reasons as to why I started this campaign is because I'm working at Feed the Children as a nutritionist. And one of the major gaps I identified, because I'm working with women of reproductive age, I noticed a gap for this, the bracket 15 to 49 years. I was able to notice that there are still adolescents in this group. And so you find that whatever the discussion we make regarding nutrition, they are not that open enough to be able to speak in front of the mothers or the caregivers. So from there, I felt like they need to separate this group, and that's where I started off focusing on adolescents specifically. Next slide, please. So with adolescent for adolescent, and my vision was to accelerate the power of nutrition in adolescent in Kenya. And I'm working with adolescents both in school and out of school. Out of school, I'm meaning those adolescents that they have dropped out because the issue of early marriages and teenage pregnancy. And the overall goal was to build the resilience and strengthening self-reliance of adolescents through advocacy and nutrition education. Next slide, please, Sean. So, as you can see, the adolescents are the missing link in the fight against malnutrition. And my target for the adolescents are the both boys and girls, 10 to 19 in school, and the adolescent out of school. What I've worked closely during this campaign is that, like Mike shared earlier, like the conception, the start of the project, we need to meet the people who are the responsible, like to get these concepts, the permission to be able to undertake this program. So for me, I started off with the Ministry of Health, and I was able to share with them the county nutrition coordinator, because I was working at county level. So I engaged with the county nutritionist, and I was able to tell about my campaign. So she linked me up with the Department of Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education. So through Ministry of Education, they gave me a letter so that I can be able to, when I go to school, to the selected school, I was going with that letter to the school head so that I can be able to inform them what I'm going to carry out. And from there, I was given permission to be able to carry this activity at that schools. And during these activities, I was also able to work closely with the faith-based organization, and this worked very handy when during COVID-19, because you find that there was the closure of schools, and so meeting these people was so hard. So I work closely with the faith-based organization so that, especially when people go to church, so at the end of the service, I was able to meet these youths. So it was easy for me. And the local authorities were there to ensure that if there is any terms of mobilization, especially working with the adolescents who are married off, just speaking with the local authorities like the chief, it was easy for me to be able to meet them, because you felt like some parents were not willing to let this adolescent be able to attend this session. Next slide, Sean, please. So one of the key activities, as you can see from the photo, nutrition is, it's good to be able to show something that they can be able to like, and to bring them that eager to be able to learn more about nutrition. So for me, one of the key activities is to conduct nutrition education within the school. And one of the specific lessons was the best coping strategies into food security as a way of building resilience, and also the nutrition requirement for the adolescent in terms of the growth and development. And also there was that aspect of life skill and sexual reproductive health education, because you find that the issue of teenage pregnancy and school dropout was still a major challenge in school. So that was something that I was able to take it up apart from nutrition, just doing that session about sexual reproductive health. Next slide, please. So from my project, so far I've been able to reach the adolescent 1,606. And as you can see, the adolescent in school, we were able to reach boys and girls. And at first, there was something, I was focusing on girls only. And the same case, I remember a scenario I was invited to invite two of the adolescent champions in school. So when I went to that meeting, it was a form of meeting to ensure that when they're trying to put something involving the adolescent, what they need in terms of the budget, what focus should we focus on about adolescent. So one of the boys said that most of the organization, like even me, I felt guilty because we are just involving the girls. We are rescuing only the girls. Why about the boys? Even them, they need to be rescued. So at a point in time during that campaign, I was able to bring also the boys for the school activities, especially the aspect of sexual reproductive health. It was important to ensure that we bring them together so that this issue of school dropout was able to reduce, so that at the end of the day, we all have the same language for both boys and girls. Also, the aspect of where in my community, when it comes to nutrition, when you're talking about food practices, what to eat, we felt the need of involving the men in terms of able to buy food that have that all food varieties, like the proteins, carbohydrates, all types of vegetables. So for us, we felt the need that it's good to ensure that the men have this information at early age, because at the end, they're the decision makers, who are going to put food on the table. So it was crucial to be able to involve these boys so that they can be able to not focus more on what their parents are doing, but to learn something that even when I grow old and then get married, I know what I'm supposed to bring to my family. So for the adolescent out of school, like I've shared earlier, these are the ones that we meet at the household level. We go at the household level, we meet them as a group so that we can educate them about nutrition, and also as a way of mentoring them to be able to go back to school. Next slide, please. So for me, what went well, from the picture you saw, this was a multi-sectoral meeting, and I was invited to be able to share the issue about adolescents. And from that meeting, there were the department, or there was the Ministry of Agriculture, there was the Ministry of Education, this Ministry of Health. So from this, I felt like it was a productive meeting, because at the end of that session, we were able to establish a youth-friendly service at the facility level to ensure that these adolescents, especially the pregnant and lactating adolescents, they're able to feel safe whenever they come to the facility. So there's that space that they were provided, at least if they have a challenge, they can be able to share their problem. And also, one of my key highlights since I joined Feed the Children in 2017 is that, like what I've shared earlier, we are focusing on women of reproductive age, 15 to 49. There was no specific activities targeting the adolescent. And I'm happy that through this campaign, the organization felt the need to be able to include these activities as part of the feed program activities. And I'm happy that it's a way of which it can be able to make sure that it's sustainable. Even if I'm not there, that activity is still going to continue. And also visiting the adolescent out of school in their respective household proved effectively. Like I've mentioned earlier, the aspect of meeting this adolescent who are pregnant, there was a time we were chased away meeting this adolescent because the parent, the spouse, felt like we were rescuing this adolescent. So we had to explain that we are just educating them on the nutrition practices, everything. So that was the best way to meet them at household, because they were not given the permission to come to a specific area so that you can educate them. And also in terms of security, there's that aspect of working closely with the community volunteers, the teachers, the religious leaders, and the local authorities. And this resulted to high turnout of the adolescent. And as you can see from the photo I shared about food groups, it was good. If you want to share something about nutrition, you need to show them what are you really talking about. And for me, I had to go to the market and to really see what is there in this community that I'm working with. So I just went and buy something that I know, even if I tell that person you need to eat orange, is orange available in that market, that area they're staying. So it was a way to ensure that whatever you learn at home, you can go back. Well, whatever you learn at school, you can go back at home and share with your parent, so that when they go to the market, they can be able to bring something back. They can go and bring fruits, and to also know the importance of that. Next slide, please. Thank you, Sean. For me, one of the key challenges is that no matter what you do in terms of the session, if you don't have that material, be able to ensure that that adolescent is able to stay back with that material so that, for reference, at least when you are not there, when he or she is going to do that session with the rest of the pupils who are not in the health club, she can be able to have that reference to show what is really there, that rather than just to speak verbally without that material. So it was good to be able to ensure that it made me to be able to gather a lot of resources so that I can be able to ensure that I have specific lesson that it's familiar with the area that I am in. So, and also the issue of COVID-19, that restriction of movement, like I mentioned earlier, it was quite challenging, but we ensure that we follow the protocol, and the aspect of the field-based organization came handy because from there I was able to meet them where they are. And also, like I've shared, the issue of meeting adolescents out of school, that was still a major challenge, but through home visit, it was very helpful, but still time consuming. Imagining trying to reach 426 adolescents out of school, just going house by house. So that was quite time consuming. Thank you. Next slide. So for me, when it comes to working with the youth, I felt like there's need to ensure that you provide this safe space for them so that they can be able, because they have the vision and goal, so that you can be able to work with them. So it's good to at least hear what they want rather than just going with what you want to do as individual, just getting their feedback. Like for me, I remember one of the sessions that we had on food groups. So they said that the best way to be able to ensure we know how to prepare this food, we need to do a cooking demo. So you still ask them, what type of food do you want to cook? They said, well, I want to cook rice and meat. So from your end, at least, you know, when you go to the market, I'm going to buy this food and come to the school, and they prepare this food. And also there's that issue of capacity building these young people on nutrition issues so that they can advocate on their behalf, because you can't be in the same place forever. So you need to have that champions so that they can be able to ensure that this project is successful and it reaches everyone. Yeah. Next slide, please. So from the photos, you can see the first one on your left. That is, I was doing the session. This was during the school closure. So I was able to mobilize both boys and girls, and we did a session on food grouping. And also on the down left, these are the nutrition champions, the pregnant and lactating. So these champions, the reason I selected them as champions is that despite being a young mother, they felt the need of going back to school. So I championed them so that even though you're a mother, you still have a chance to continue their studies. And the same people, they're mentoring the other teen mothers so that they can be able to know that they are not alone. And from that area, that is at the facility level. So you see the aspect of involving the local authorities came handy, because the moment these parents were able to be advised that it's not a risky mission, but rather a way of educating this adolescent, they were able to allow this adolescent to come at the facility so that they can be able to learn. And it was good because you find that these adolescents are from different villages. We work in villages. So you find that if we have 8 villages, at least everyone is represented and they go back to educate the rest. And the down end on the right, that is one of the staff from the Ministry of Health. I was able to invite her so that she can share a session on reproductive health. And for me, it was a good one because involving the Ministry of Health was so important, especially during COVID-19. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jane. A lot to take in there. And again, we've seen lots of questions going through on the chat. So thanks so much. In the interest of time, I'm going to whiz through to the next presentation. But like I said, there'll be plenty of time to talk about your specific case during the Q&A, if that's okay. So thank you, Jane. So moving on, we've got Maxwell, or I like to call him Max, who's going to share his presentation. If I can just get my tech all together, if you bear with me 1 second. Here we go. Okay, hopefully I've done this correctly.
Can you hear me, Sean?
Yes, can hear you. Can't see you though.
Ah, I'm on.
And I'm just trying to make this full screen. Sorry. Max, if you want to start presenting, and I will just figure out how to make it full screen. I'm just going to put a spotlight on you so everyone can see you.
Okay.
Great. So take it away, and in the background, I'll just try and make this full screen.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Maxwell Mumba, and I was part of the Global Youth Leaders for Nutrition from Zambia. And I'm just here to share more insights and on the projects that I carried out as a youth leader for nutrition in my country, and the challenges that we faced and the achievements, of course. So, like you can see on the first slide, that is just part of our youth team visiting one of the farms owned by a young person who really grows different varieties of fruits and vegetables just to supply to the community. So in my country, during my projects, we established what we called the National Youth Network on SDGs. So with this National Youth Network on SDGs, its main focus was to amplify and advocate for the attainment and the achievement of the SDGs, and just track the progress and keep the people accountable to the efforts that are being made. And of course, with particular focus on SDG 2, which is zero hunger. Quite all right. During the projects as well, we had strong partnerships with the Ministry of Health and the National Food and Nutrition Commission, not forgetting the Ministry of Higher Education, where we were allowed to work with universities, just bringing in students together to keep our policymakers, our lawmakers, our key stakeholders accountable to the nutrition space. So next slide, please, Sean. Yeah, those are the focus areas which I've just talked about in terms of, we're going to look at in depth in terms of the objectives and the interventions. Next slide, Sean. So with our platform, which is the National Youth Network on SDGs, which was established during my reign as a youth leader for nutrition, was specifically a platform to bring in the multi-stakeholders together in an effort to end malnutrition. And through the support from SUN Alliance and the Youth Leaders for Nutrition program, we have seen that it was kind of like more important to engage with parliamentarians, the community members themselves, and the victims in the various communities, mostly in Lusaka, Chongwe, and Rufunza, because these are the key areas where I had the projects run. Not forgetting the media. The media played a very big role in ensuring that our project was a success. And quite all right, of course, we ensured that we brought in not only these key stakeholders, but also we advocated for the young people to be at the table, not to be seen as beneficiaries, but as stakeholders in the discussions of not only the attainment of ending nutrition, but also the accountability aspect. So with our National Youth Network on SDG2, which is mainly focusing on SDG2, was to bring in a strategy to bring in these key efforts together in terms of the policymakers at community level, at national level, even at traditional level, where we engaged with the
Max, we seem to have lost you. If you're still online, can I suggest turning your camera off? And that might restore the connection. Unless other people are, unless it's just me, but I think it might be an issue affecting everybody if we can't hear Mike. Sorry, Max. Whilst we're waiting for Max to reconnect, I was just mentioning in the chat box that we'd really welcome your specific questions that you have for Max and for the other youth leaders. So please take the time to just go into that chat box and share your specific questions, and then we'll have time to answer them in relation to their project or just their role as a youth leader in general. It looks like Max has been able to rejoin. So if you are with us, Max, can you
Thanks, Sean. I was just dropped off with internet. Hope I'm loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah.
Please
Sorry for that. Yeah,
no problem.
Sorry for that. Yeah. So with the key focus areas in terms of achieving our project was mainly to focus on nutrition issues, food system issues, education, and agriculture. And through our SUN Alliance, which gave us the young people the opportunity, with the establishment of the youth network, was basically to amplify the voices that were already in place on issues to do with nutrition, sexual reproductive health, climate change, food systems, governance, agriculture, and education. By so doing, why did we focus on these areas? As we all know that nutrition has a multi-sectorial approach. We cannot talk about nutrition without talking about agriculture, without talking about health. So that was the core purpose of us coming up with this strong youth group called the National Youth Network on SDGs to keep our leaders to account. Next slide, please. So with our mandate was basically to maximize the youth potential as a human resource. Of course, through volunteering to have that robust engagement in the promotion of the SDGs. Apart from that, we also had a success of generating awareness on the issues that I've just previously highlighted, and also bring up debate, consensus building, and support for the subject, with more particular policy influence in terms of formulation and implementation when it comes to food security, enhanced food systems, sustainable agriculture at all levels. Why did we also focus on this? Was because as we all know that Zambia is ranked as a high burden country when it comes to the stunting levels. And it's through the youth voices that we could contribute to see how young people have managed to keep our leaders to account. I know I have less time. Let me just quick rush to the next slide in terms of giving in the successes of the engagements that we've had. Through our youth network on SDGs, we, in collaboration with Ministry of Health, with the National Food and Nutrition Commission, also with Ministry of Higher Education, we came up with an event or a platform called the Inter-University Conference in conjunction with the National Youth Network on SDGs. So with this conference, it was to bring in the key decision makers in the country. So in that meeting or in that conference, we had people from the Ministry of Finance, we had people from the Ministry of Health, we had people from NFNC, to respond to the questions raised by the young people, to the promises made by the government to keep them to account. And through this conference, we learned that young people did not understand the system of how we should advocate. It's through this conference that doors were opened for young people to engage meaningfully, because much of the time young people have cried for spaces to be at the table, but participation, it's just more like ticking the box. But it's through this conference that we learned that young people really are the driving force in ensuring that the agenda is achieved. Not forgetting the civil society organizations, the church as well, they played a big role in our communities, and the traditional leaders, because these are cardinal in the most rural parts of the country, such as Chongwe and Rufunza. Next slide, please. I've already spoken to this. Some of the challenges that we faced was, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic, which some of my colleagues have also speak to, and some of the policies that were in place were old. Like, let me say, in lack of a better term, they were quite old, so they needed to be amended to suit our current needs. Also, the private sector involvement. This was something that we as young people thought it's something that we needed the private sector to play a big role in championing in the end of malnutrition. These discussions happened through the inter-university conference. Next slide, Sean. Leaving no one behind, our project also involved people with disabilities, because these are the people that have highly been neglected in the food systems issues, in the nutrition issues. And through these engagements, quite a number of issues came out with the engagements with organizations that deal with people living with disabilities, such as ensure that children with disabilities and pregnant breastfeeding women with disabilities can access all nutrition services. These are the issues that came out from the engagements we've had in terms of meetings and capacity building workshops. We learned quite a lot from people living with disabilities, such as develop information on breastfeeding infants with disabilities and providing complementary foods, and for children with difficulties in swallowing, chewing, and eating independently. This is something that we also noticed that much less ICE materials was being published or is readily available for people who are living with disabilities in terms of access to nutrition services. Quite a number of projects we have also worked with the Ministry of Health, in particular the Adolescent Health Unit, where through the network, we managed to push for policy recommendation that nutrition should be part of the pillar of the 2022 to 2026 National Adolescent and Strategic Plan. And I'm here happy and proud that our recommendations were put in that document. And as we speak currently, I'm at the unveiling meeting in Southern Province, where the Minister of Health is actually publicizing this document, which we highly contributed in ensuring that nutrition is really included into that document. Next, Sean. That's a picture of the meetings we've had with people with disabilities and young people, of course, with disabilities. Next, Sean. Yeah, so as part of our youth network, we partnered with the private sector came on board after the conference we had. They trained us on various skills such as aquaculture, how to ensure that we create our own agroecology pesticides and agroecology acid, to ensure that we also chip in with the climate agenda issues in the fight against malnutrition, because we noticed that climate change has really been something that we need to focus on when we're talking about food systems and nutrition. Next, Sean. The media. So this is These are some of the publications in the newspapers. I've been on live television. I've been on various radio stations, just championing the nutrition agenda, not only with me, but also with my colleagues in the country and in various provinces as well, the nutrition champions we trained under the youth network. Next, Sean. So this was during the meeting with the members of parliament who are young people. We're just raising in issues and key recommendations in the budget process on the nutrition financing, which was financed, which had a percentage of under 1.5%. So we're lobbying with the MPs to push parliament so that they can increase the nutrition budget in the national budget. So this was at parliament buildings with some of our youth network members. Thank you very much. Asante sana. Merci beaucoup. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Max. Another fantastic example of engaging in advocacy across different channels and targeting different audiences, and so much we can learn from there. I am very aware that we are a little bit over time, so I'm really keen for us to have a rich discussion with this Q&A section now. So I'd love to start off with a couple of very specific questions for each of you. Start off with, so I think we had one specific question from Mike from Shanaris, who is one of our new National Youth Coordinators. Shan, if you're on the call, I'd love to invite you to share your question directly about how districts were chosen. So if you are on the call, did you want to just come off mute and share your question in the group? Otherwise, I can read it out. There's a lot of people here, so it's hard for me to... so I can see Shannon Reese is on the call, but if you'd rather not come off mute, I can read it out. I will take the silence as maybe she's having technical difficulties, but never mind, I will read it out. So Shan's question was, Mike, what were your main considerations in selecting the districts where you implemented your project? And who were the main people with you as you did this lobbying and training? Hope that question is clear. I'd love to hear your answer.
Yes, Sean, I think the question is quite clear. So basically, the criteria for selection of the district was based in terms of where SISONA is working. I am connected to the Civil Society and Nutrition Alliance in Malawi, SISONA, and SISONA is working in a number of districts in Malawi. So it would have made sense for me to focus the initiative where SISONA is already working. So that was the main consideration. The second consideration, we are looking at the prevalence of stunting and prevalence of malnutrition in particular. So these are the districts that always year and year they report high cases of malnutrition. The third criteria, we're also looking in terms of already youth networks that are already established within the districts and organizations that are working with young people in these districts. So lucky enough, we had two youth-led organizations that were members of SISONA, and they were also already operating in these districts. So that's why I had to make sure that we make synergies with them and we move forward with the campaign. The stakeholders that we worked with, as I mentioned, we worked with organizations that are working, that are implementing youth-led nutrition activities in these districts, and they are members of SISONA. Other stakeholders included the media, of course, because we wanted to make sure that whatever we are doing is able to be channeled through the media, and they also able to make noise, something like that. Other stakeholders, I think these were quite the main stakeholders who we engaged in the campaign. Yeah.
Great answer. Thanks, Mike. And Shan, I hope you found that helpful. I know Shan's having some issues coming off mute, so maybe Shan, you can respond in the chat box. Cool. I had a specific question for Jane. After hearing your presentation, you mentioned when you were talking about the challenges that I hope I've sort of summarized this accurately, but you were saying that the availability of sort of accurate nutrition information was a real challenge. I just wonder if we have partners on this call who kind of want to help overcome that challenge, what would you find most useful in trying to overcome this issue of lack of accurate or relevant nutrition information? How can others support you when those challenges come up? Hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you, Sean, for the question. For me, like I've shared about the resources, I feel like the partners from the respective countries, they can be able to share the available resources for the nutrition and relating to what the national youth coordinators are focusing on. Like for instance, adolescents, what resources can I use so that I can be able to ensure that this what I'm doing is effective? And also, I feel like there is that need to enhance knowledge on fundraising on my end, and also monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. And for other stakeholders, there is need to provide that quarterly supportive supervision during this field visit. That's what I feel, especially from the previous program that we have done. And also, like I've shared with providing funds and also linking us with other partners in our countries, this will be able to ensure that even if I have someone in the county that I'm staying, they can link me with someone who's doing similar activities that I'm doing, so that you can be able to work together because we have the same goal. So it's more of like linking us with other able partners in our mission to end malnutrition. Yes.
Thanks, Jane. I really like that message of sort of standing in solidarity with each other, utilizing the power and the resources that other partners have to enable young people. So yeah, definitely agree with that advice. On the kind of specific questions for the speakers, I hope you don't mind, but I have a specific one for Max as well. I thought it was really, really great, really interesting that you took the time to target children and young people with disabilities. And I wonder, how did you begin identifying where these children and young people with disabilities were? And how did you adapt your approach? What were the measures you took to make sure that you can engage with them in the right way? And do you have advice for others who want to ensure that children and young people with disabilities are included and engaged? So I'd love to hear your answer to that one.
Thanks so much, Sean. And it's a really good question. How we came about in identifying or working with people with disabilities is when you look at the 2030 national vision that we have is leaving no one behind. And as we were having our approach analysis, we realized that people with disabilities were highly left out. Even when we conducted a few field researches on health facilities to see if there's any communication material in terms of nutrition to people with disabilities, I can say 2 out of 100 had such ICE materials, and it was wise that we engaged them. Quite right, in Zambia, we've got a number of organizations that are working with people with disabilities, and that is how we managed to bring them on board to understand what challenges do they face. And it was so amazing to learn that also people with albinism are really, really affected in terms of access to food, because you'd realize when it gets very hot, they'll need a sunscreen for them to move in the sun. So if they do not have that sunscreen, access to the markets to go and buy food is really difficult for them. So there's so many issues that came about in working with people with disabilities. And my recommendation is we need not to leave them behind, because they remain a key player in achieving our agenda in terms of advocacy, and bringing them on board as well so that their voices could be heard. Leaving no one behind really is the world's vision. By 2030, we have to leave no one behind. We need to have the universal health coverage also talks about people with disabilities. So it is really, really important that we get to learn their challenges and act upon their challenges and see how best we can not leave them behind, but be with them through the whole journey.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Max. What a powerful call to action for all of us there, to be so to be more mindful of those who are most risk of being left behind. It certainly aligns with the values, the mission of the Civil Society Network, and certainly with our next phase of the Youth Leaders for Nutrition programme. One of the top priorities for us is really engaging those most marginalised, most underrepresented children and young people, and those with disabilities are certainly one of those key groups that we really need to make sure are brought around the table, make sure that their voices are heard. So really great to see an example of where you've been doing that, Max. Thanks for sharing. I am aware that we are really racing out of time and we're reaching the end. I was hoping for a bit longer for our discussion. I'm aware that some people might need to drop off. So I wanted, in these last couple of minutes, I mentioned before, and I will say sorry about the questions. We've been capturing all the questions that have been shared in the chat, and we've been collating them in a document, and we'll try and make sure that all your questions are answered, and we can circulate those afterwards in an email. So please keep firing away your questions, and I know that the panelists will be happy to answer them after this event as well. So yeah, please keep sharing them. But in these last couple of minutes, I did mention that Jane has taken on a new role as one of our national youth coordinators. And just to give a very quick, I want Jane to explain really what this next phase of the programme is, but we're really prioritising now this kind of network-based community organising approach with young people, so that we can reach those most marginalised at the grassroots. So we've recruited 20 national youth coordinators across 20 countries, and Jane is leading those efforts in Kenya. So Jane, I'd love for you to just, for everyone on the call, some people might be familiar with this next phase, some people this might be new, but I'd love for you to share a bit about what your mission is as a National Youth Coordinator and how you'd like to see people engaging with your work and the kind of partnerships. You mentioned it in the answer to the last question about how others can work with you. It'd be great to hear what that next step looks like and how we can all support. I hope that's okay, Jane. There's a lot for you to cover there.
No, it's okay. Thank you, Sean. The National Youth Coordinator is the next phase for the SUN Youth Leadership Program. And the National Youth Coordinator is a way, or is a lead in a way of building the national youth networks of youth activists. And building networks means identifying existing networks of youth activists and also the youth-led organization, as well as approaching this. We are talking mostly about the marginalized communities of young people. That person that is not able to access the nutrition services, that person who is not able to learn, like someone who is in that urban setup about nutrition, to reach that person at the grassroots level. And also this phase brings about the meaningful solidarity of young people. And also it opens the door to ensure that the most marginalized children and also the young people have a seat at the decision-making tables. These decision tables, I don't want you to picture only at the high level, also picture that grassroots level. If that person can be able to meet that local leader like the chief, to ensure that in my community, I'm facing this challenge, to be able to also make that impact in that household, that mom, dad, I've learned something about nutrition. You need to do this, to buy something so that it can improve my nutrition status. So bringing that marginalized children and young people at these decision-making tables, it will enable us to be able to demand that right to food and adequate nutrition for all. And as nutrition community, we are all focusing on major goal to ending malnutrition in all its forms. And I believe this phase is a very nice approach, and I'm glad that I'm able to be part of this team to ensure that everyone is reached across the country, across the world, to ensure that we are all speaking one voice, ending malnutrition. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Jane. That was a great summary of what our shared mission is moving forwards in the Youth Leaders for Nutrition programme. For those who maybe like the sound of that or want to find out more, we'll send information in the follow-up email so you can learn more about each of these national youth coordinators and also start to think about how you can engage. Maybe you represent an organisation that is interested in partnering and supporting this work, and so we'd love to bring you in those conversations. But one thing I will say is that in the civil society network, we're all about learning from what's already working. And this program didn't come out of nowhere. It was really built on the successes of our existing Youth Leaders for Nutrition. They have already sort of demonstrated how to do this work meaningfully, how to build these networks of young people. And really, we're just following their lead and we're scaling it up. And looking to apply those learnings. And the same for these sessions today. You know, these invaluable learnings that the 3 youth leaders that you heard from, they are informing all of our work moving forwards. And I really hope you can do the same. I hope that what they've shared you'll be able to take away and apply to your own work to think about how to do this work meaningfully, whilst also achieving impact for nutrition or other rights areas as rights issues as well. So I just want to say a huge thank you to our 3 panelists, Jane, Mike and Maxwell, and also a huge thank you to everyone for being so engaged throughout. The chat has been fantastic, and like I said, we've been taking notes of everything you've been asking, and we'll aim to provide an answer to everything you've shared, and look forward to seeing you on many other calls in the near future. We're doing a series of these learning sessions, capturing and sharing good practices, and we'll also be having specific calls on our youth engagement program as well, showcasing the amazing work. So right now our national youth coordinators are finalising their action plans, and that's when the really exciting work starts happening. They're going to start building their networks in each of their countries, and we'll be really looking to showcase that. So look forward to seeing many of you on all those different calls. In the meantime, please remember you can always reach out to the CSN Secretariat if you have any questions or ideas or thoughts. You can find our contact information on our website. And I think that's all for now. Thanks so much for joining us. Sorry I overran a little bit, but hopefully you've all learned a lot. So have a lovely day wherever you are, or night or morning, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Gracias.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.